This is Janice Ian, and you are listening to Everything Fab Four on Salon.com.
Welcome to Everything Fab Four, a new podcast focused on fun and intelligent stories about the Beatles. I'm your host, Ken Womack, music culture columnist for Salon.com and a Beatles scholar and historian. No other band, or popular phenomenon for that matter, has enjoyed the global impact of the Beatles. They are part of our human fabric. They created an enduring music that brings people together, and just about everyone has their own Beatles story to tell. Some that are surprisingly deep and unexpected. With each episode, we'll be featuring a new guest to share their Fab Four journey, along with amazing theme music from Black Rabbit. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everybody has a story.
One of my earliest Beatles memories was in elementary school. I remember somebody had brought the 7-inch single of Hey Jude to school. Which, was kind of a big deal for me because in my household, you didn't really buy records because we were lower middle class. And my mother's thing was like, why would you ever want to buy a record? They play songs on the radio for free. I remember thinking, like, someday when I'm like super rich, I'm going to own every Beatles album.
Today's guest is Weird Al Yankovic, an American singer, musician, record producer, and actor who is known for his beloved musical parodies. He is also famous for his polka medleys of popular songs, many of which feature his trademark accordion. In 1976, his first comedy song was aired on the Dr. Demento Show. Since that time, he has sold more than 12 million albums, recorded more than 150 parodies, and performed more than 1,000 live shows. His work has earned him 5 Grammy Awards, including his debut win for Eat It, his hit parody of Michael Jackson's Beat It. Remarkably, his first top 10 Billboard album, Straight Outta Linwood, and single, White and Nerdy, were both released in 2006, nearly 3 decades into his career. His latest album, Mandatory Fun, became his first #1 LP during its debut week. Weird Al's unique brand of success comes in part from his innovative use of music videos to further parody pop culture, the song's original artist, and the original music videos themselves. In many cases, he would direct his own videos, later going on to direct videos for other artists, including Ben Folds, Hanson's, the Black Crowes, and the Presidents of the United States of America. With the decline of music television and the onset of social media, Weird Al shrewdly used YouTube and other music video sites to publish his work. This strategy helped to boost sales of his later albums. In addition to his musical efforts, Weird Al wrote and starred in the film UHF and the television series The Weird Al Show. He has also made guest appearances and performed voice acting roles on many television shows and video web content, in addition to starring in Al TV specials on MTV. He has also written 2 children's books, When I Grow Up and My New Teacher and Me. In March 2018, Weird Al released a new song, The Hamilton Polka, a medley consisting of several songs from the hit Broadway musical. Welcome, Weird Al. I wonder if you could go ahead and tell me about your early life as a musician. What was the spark that got you playing?
Oh, gosh. I never thought that I'd be a professional musician. That was maybe the furthest thing from my mind. I always thought that I would, grow up and be an adult and do adult things. And I actually decided when I was 12 years old that I was going to be an architect. So I went to college and got my degree in architecture. And somewhere along the line, I got turned astray. I discovered the Dr. Demento Show, and he exposed me to all these amazing comedy music icons like Tom Lehrer and Spike Jones and Stan Freberg. And I started sending him tapes in the mail, and he played them on his show, and I built up a cult following, and that kind of made me think, well, this is more fun than being an architect. So that's kind of how I got started. I got turned onto that pathway.
Yeah, and that show was, of course, so amazing, right? In the 1970s, it was, and beyond, of course, and thankfully he's still with us. But what an incredible powerhouse of a show that was. Do you have any memories of the parodies that got you started thinking that this could be something for you?
Well, the thing was, I mean, back when I was listening in the early and mid '70s, there was no YouTube. There was no way that any of this kind of strangeness would ever be on the radio waves. There was nowhere to be exposed to people that Dr. Demento was exposing me to. So it was a real window into something that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise. I mean, Dr. Demento changed my life in a very real way. I mean, there's nobody that would have played my music when I was a teenager. I was literally recording songs in my bedroom with an accordion and a cheesy little cassette tape recorder. I mean, there's no way any logical radio station would have given that airtime. But Dr. Demento said, "Oh, this kid's got something, unusual. He's got." He plays the accordion. First of all, that's pretty unique, and he it's kind of novel that this teenage kid playing an accordion thinks he's cool. So he gave me exposure like early on, along with all the greats that he'd been playing on his show, and gave me that kind of early exposure, which I'm positive I would not be in the entertainment field today if not for Dr. Demento.
I vividly remember when I first discovered that show thinking, they can't do this, can they? This is not right. No wonder it's on at, midnight or 2 a.m. or something, or cloistered away on Saturday and Sunday. It just seemed like it was inappropriate somehow.
Well, it was inappropriate in a lot of ways. In fact, my mother, at one point early on, she forbade me from listening to the show because she overheard some of the songs being played. And some of them, they weren't dirty, but they were a little blue, some double entendres and things that, her 14-year-old son shouldn't really be listening to. So after that, it was more clandestine. I would, Sunday nights, I would take my AM/FM alarm clock radio into bed with me, and I'd pull the sheets up over my head and turn the volume way down low and have my ear right next to it, and I'd listen to the Dr. Demento Show in secret.
But you were playing the accordion before the parodies, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was my axe. That's what I grew up playing. I took lessons from ages 7 to 10. And then just kind of kept playing and practicing on my own after that. But that was my early musical training. So I didn't really fit in anywhere. I wasn't really accepted into my friends' rock bands. Nobody really. I became a de facto solo musician because nobody really wanted to play with me.
Another one of the guests on the program, Stephen Van Zandt, said that there was a certain time, especially in the early 60s, where everybody he knew played the accordion.
No kidding. That wasn't quite my memory of it, but I get certainly in the 60s, it was more acceptable, I guess, than it became in later decades. And Lawrence Welk's show was very big, especially with my older relatives. And I actually started taking lessons because there was a door-to-door accordion teacher that came by and asked my parents, would your young son Alfred like to take accordion lessons? And because my parents were visionaries, they said, well, yes, of course. Who wouldn't want their child to take accordion lessons?
It's a natural choice. It's I could say to my students here at Monmouth University, door-to-door accordion salesman. I don't know if they'd know what to do with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think door-to-door period works these days. But the accordion thing, that was just a fluke. And again, I mean, if it had been, they did offer guitar lessons as well. But if I grew up playing the guitar, I don't think Dr. Demento would have played my stuff because it wasn't so much my songs were great. It was like, what is this accordion player doing? Sending me cassette tapes.
Were your parents musical?
Not as such. And a lot of people think that my dad was Frankie Yankovic, who was America's polka king. And we shared the same last name, but no relation as far as we could tell. Neither one of my parents was really musical. My dad once bought a $10 guitar at a swap meet and played it tunelessly around the house, just untuned strings, just singing and playing very, very badly. So that I don't think I got my musical aptitude from him, but maybe my shamelessness.
How very avant-garde of him. Going back to Van Zandt for a moment, so he's playing the accordion, and everybody he knew threw down their accordions and started playing the guitar in '64. Do you remember your earliest Beatles memories?
I wasn't. I was just vaguely aware of the Beatles during their heyday, because I would have been like 4 in 1964. And I didn't listen to a lot of pop radio until my early teens. One of my earliest Beatles memories was in elementary school. I remember somebody had brought the 7-inch single of "Hey Jude" to school, which was kind of a big deal for me, because in my household you didn't really buy records, because we were lower middle class, and my mother's thing was like, why would you ever want to buy a record? They play songs on the radio for free, So, but that was like an early Beatles memory, and I got really into the Beatles maybe a couple years later, again in my early teens. And they quickly became my favorite group. And I remember thinking, like, someday when I'm like super rich, I'm going to own every Beatles album. That was like, to me, that was like a big thing. Like, imagine if you like had every Beatles album in your house. That was a big thing.
That'll show, Mom. You can own these. You can own these records.
Now you can own on a little USB drive in your car.
That's right, and you can have all of the rest of the '60s acts on the same USB drive. So I did some reading about you, and I was just delighted to hear about your folk club, your coffee club experiences.
Oh, it was called Coffee House. I guess it wasn't literally a folk club, but I guess a lot of folky kind of things would happen there. I mean, a lot of people coming in and playing their Dan Fogelberg covers, and a lot of acoustic guitar and mellow Southern California vibe kind of things going on. And this was during my college days. It was sort of like a talent show, because like anybody could go up and perform. So it was like amateur night. But I was just really out of place, because like, again, all these like mellow folky acoustic acts would come up, and then I'd come up with my accordion, and my friend Joel had the bongos, and we would just start playing like bizarre medleys of every song ever written in the history of the world, going from the theme from 2001 into the theme from The Godfather, into like some ABBA song. I don't know. It's just very random. And people were like, what is going on here? And they dug it. It was like my first positive reinforcement, because for the first time people were like, thinking I was funny, or that I was at least entertaining. So that was sort of like my first real live performances.
Well, speaking of being funnier and entertaining, so is My Bologna the breakthrough, or was it earlier?
It was certainly, I guess you could consider that the breakthrough. I mean, there's a number of points early in my career that you could say, well, this was, you took this to the next plateau with this one. And My Bologna was the first big one, I guess, because before that, I was getting airplay in the Dr. Demento Show, but aside from my friends, I don't think a lot of people were calling up the request lines asking for it. And My Bologna was the first song that I'd done on the Demento Show, which really sort of went viral, I guess, in the days before things went viral. And I remember I was in college at the time. I had recorded the song in the bathroom across the hall from my college campus radio station, and I sent it to Dr. Demento. And a few weeks later, I got a postcard in the mail saying that My Bologna had been #1 on the Dr. Demento Funny 5 for the last 2 weeks in a row. And that blew my mind. And I thought, I distinctly remember thinking, my life is never going to get better than this. This is like the high point of my life.
We'll be back with more from Weird Al after these messages. So did you discover when you were at Coffee House that you enjoyed performing live too? Or were you really just about the reaction people would have to these funny songs?
Well, I always enjoyed performing. I always got a kick out of it. But this is the first time that I was kind of getting that, wave of appreciation back at me. So, I mean, that definitely adds to the experience when you have people, enjoying you and smiling and laughing and clapping. And, the more you get from an audience, the more you're inclined to give back. So that was my first experience of having a really positive experience. I mean, I played accordion for my cousin's wedding when I was 8 years old, but that wasn't the same kind of thing. This was the first time I was playing for strangers, and they actually liked me, so that was a big deal at the time.
So I guess that must have been a real eye opener, because it's not like you could perform your architecture, right? And what you were studying at the time.
Yeah, I mean, architecture just wound up not being a great fit for me. I mean, when I was 12 years old, I had a drafting class that I liked, that I was good in math and good in art and design. And my guidance counselor said, "Oh, you should be an architect." And I said, "Okay, sure." But I mean, when I got there, I was not, even average. I was below average, which was a real blow for me, because in high school I was the valedictorian. I was like the straight A, top of my class nerdy kid. I graduated at 16. It was like I was used to being, I was used to excelling at whatever I did. And in college, I was not even average. I was really struggling, and I think it's because I didn't have a love for it, because everybody in my architecture labs were obsessed with it and form following function, and they were really into it, and I didn't have that kind of love for it, and my passion was comedy and music, and I still didn't think I was going to make a living doing that, but it was a very confusing time in my life, because I kind of knew in the back of my head that I wasn't going to spend my life doing the thing that I was being trained for.
Before we move on to some of the parodies in specific, I'm wondering, could you explain a little bit about, and I think some of our listeners might not pick up on this, and I know our students certainly wouldn't, about your love of polka. What drove you to that? Because it's sort of an art form that I don't think a lot of folks think about, even now and even after your work.
Well, as hard as it is to believe, I'm sure, when you take accordion lessons at age 7 to 10, they don't teach you Led Zeppelin songs. They teach you polka, because polka is sort of the definitive genre for the accordion. I learned a lot of polka and some classical pieces, but not anything that you consider really rock or even contemporary. It was all polka and songs written hundreds of years ago. So when I stopped taking lessons and started just kind of playing by ear on my own, I would play along with the songs on the radio, and I would kind of learn the chord structures of pop songs, and that's sort of like what got me into playing rock and roll on the accordion. It was because I wasn't trained that way, but I quickly picked it up, and again, even though my friends didn't think it was appropriate for me to be playing rock and roll on the accordion, that was where my interests were, and that was the only ability that I had. That's to this day, that's the only instrument that I can play well. I mean, that's my axe. Anytime you see me in a music video holding a guitar, it's totally a prop.
So one thing that as folks discovered you, me being one of them in those initial years, is that these weren't weak parodies. I mean, obviously you would find a niche in terms of turning "Beat It" into "Eat It," for example. But as far as the music goes, those are pretty painstaking works, right?
We try, and I have to give full credit to my band. I've had the same band since the early 80s, and they are some of the best musicians in the world. They can do every genre imaginable, and I'm very lucky that they've stuck with me for all this time. And maybe in the first couple albums, we weren't as painstaking. In fact, there's accordion all over the first couple albums. And when we try to do parodies, we try to make them sound almost exactly like the original now. And the original songs obviously don't have accordion. So it got to the point where we thought, hey, we have the aptitude, and we can take a little time with this now. Why don't we just really make it sound like the original recording, so that when people hear the song on the radio for the first time, they're thinking, oh yeah, that's that pop song that I've been hearing all the time. And wait a minute, those aren't the words. So we like to take people on a little journey and then make a big sharp left turn.
And there's no doubt that affects that effect exactly achieves that kind of moment for listeners. But one thing that, also is, not just parodying the original act and the original song, but you're also honoring it by playing it really well. I love that about you and your band. So kudos.
Thank you. I've heard a lot of nice comments from people whose work I parodied, and they're pretty impressed. They'll say, we had this thing in the bridge, which is almost like you can't even really hear it, but you picked it out and you nailed it. Like we take such care to copy things exactly that we find little things that most people wouldn't even be aware of, and maybe only the original artist knows that we got it right, but it feels good to know that they're happy with it.
Now, have you ever had any artists not be happy with the result?
No, not really. I mean, the famous exception was Coolio, and that was more a matter of not that he didn't like the song, but he claims that he didn't give permission at the time. It's a whole saga. But at the end of the day, he's fine. It was a big misunderstanding, and he's totally fine now. But other than that, I mean, everybody that I've ever parodied has when I've run into them, they've always, to my face, at least they've been very complimentary.
I wonder if, our audience in particular will be quite interested to hear about your attempted work on Live and Let Die.
Oh, yeah. I'll obviously talk about it for this podcast, but I hesitate to bring that up because it's a story that I wish never got out there, because for the last 20 years, people have been saying, oh, I hear Paul McCartney turned you down for a parody. And he did, but it's, he had a good reason to it, and he's got a great sense of humor. So I hate it when they put him on the same list as people like Prince, who just turned me down because he doesn't like parody songs. Paul was totally fine with me doing a parody of Live and Let Die, but he said my idea was chicken pot pie. And Paul very famously is vegetarian, and he says, I'm fine with you doing the parody, but can you make it something not with chicken? Because how about tofu pot pie? And I said, well, I can't really do that because the whole chorus of the song was it's all about chicken, and it just didn't work. So sadly, I had to let that go. So I wish, I love Paul McCartney, obviously, and I hate that, people to this day are asking, how come Paul wouldn't let you do that song? It's he had a very valid reason, and he has a great sense of humor, and it just didn't work out.
He absolutely did. But let's be honest. I mean, tofu does not scan as well either as chicken. Yeah, in terms of the original text.
And just to give you an example of, again, what a great sport Paul is, I actually got to direct Paul McCartney. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but a few years ago, I did a 3D movie for the Orange County Fair called Al's Brain in 3D. And we got Paul on camera to ask one of the questions, because we were doing man on the street questions, and then I answer questions about the brain. So I got Paul actually to say, tell me, Al, how does the brain actually work? And he strums his guitar, and which blew my mind that he'd agree to do that. I called up his office asking if Sir Paul would want to do this, thinking there's no way in a million years. And a month later, I get a call from his office saying yes, he's available, and we'll arrange a time. And I just could not believe it. I got to meet him. I met him in '84, but I got to meet him again at the Coachella Music Festival. And we set up the cameras backstage, and before his show, he came by for 5 minutes, and we shot his bit, and it went off, and it was one of the high points of my life. I mean, he's one of the few people. I don't really get stage struck too much or starstruck. But he's one of the few people that it's difficult for me to just be normal with, just because he's meant so much to me in my life. I'm sure he would appreciate people just to have a normal conversation. And I tried my best, but the whole time my brain is screaming, "It's Paul McCartney! You're talking to Paul McCartney!"
Oh, so what is it then about the Beatles that keeps you coming back, that has you so starstruck like that, where you might not be with other world-class musicians?
Well, I mean, they're, in my mind, the greatest band of all time, and I mean, nostalgia enters into it, I guess, because I grew up listening to the Beatles. They were, a big part of my teenage years, and I would listen to them constantly, and their music age as well. I mean, every new generation discovers them, and they've obviously got lasting appeal, and pound for pound, I don't think you're going to find a better pop band ever.
Yeah, so it's just strictly a matter of superlatives. They're the outlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
You also, right, had a connection with Mr. Harrison too, correct?
Yeah, I did a parody of Taxman called Pac-Man back in, I think, '82, back when Pac-Man was a big craze. And this is before I had a record deal, and I was just recording stuff for the Dr. Demento Show. So in those days, I didn't bother to get permission. It was just sort of like, oh, I'll just write this goofy song and play it on the radio. And Dr. Demento played the song. And I think after a couple of weeks of playing it, he got a cease and desist from George Harrison's attorney. I'm sure George never heard it, because I heard, decades after the fact, through his son, Danny, who I'm friends with, he said that George was a fan of mine, that he had a copy of my movie UHF in the house, and he actually liked my stuff. So I don't think this was coming from George. It was just like one of those kind of automatic things that attorneys do when they see a copyright breach. And they sent Dr. Demento a cease and desist letter that he couldn't play it anymore. So fast forward, gosh, how many years would this be? 35, almost 40 years later. Because I'm friends with Danny and Olivia now, I said, hey, about this Pac-Man song from 1982, can I put this on like a rarities album? And they're like, yeah, sure. So that it actually got an official release a couple of years ago on my box set after all this time.
And you performed, am I remembering correctly, at George Fest?
I did. Oh, yeah. I didn't know that's what you were referring to. I played at George Fest again a couple of years ago, and I did a What Is Life, which is one of my favorite George songs. And that was a great experience. I had such a fun time. It was an amazing band, and the crowd was great. And I'm glad that got captured. That's on the DVD Blu-ray, I guess. But yeah, that was really a blast. I was very honored to be a part of that.
That was a tremendous show. The version of Sir Frankie Crisp is just wonderful too, and certainly your work. Now, did you manage to inject any parody, or was this just straight?
It was very straight. I mean, it was a very kind of Weird Al performance, I guess. I was very goofy in my presentation, but I mean, I didn't change any words. I tried to sing it as straight as possible, and give it all the respect that it was due.
So when you sit down now and you're going to do a parody, what are the steps that you take? Would you say it's like songwriting, where you get this bolt out of the air, out of the blue that creates the moment, or is it more conscious?
It's both. If I'm lucky, it'll be a bolt out of the blue. And half my material is original, and that's a whole different writing process. But for the parodies, basically what I'll do is I'll study the Billboard charts. I'll listen to a lot of pop radio. I'll try to determine what are the big songs of the moment, and which songs have a real strong musical hook to them. And then I'll see if I can come up with a funny idea. I'll sit down and I'll come up with like 100 different ideas for each song. And, 99% of those ideas will be horrible, but if I'm lucky, maybe one of them will be okay. And then if I've got an idea that I think would sustain humor for 3 minutes, I'll have my manager contact the original artist's people and see if we can get their permission, which I always do, even though legally it's a gray area. And if they're cool with it, then I'll write the song, and that's a whole other thing. And I spend a lot of time these days writing parody songs, just because I know that I have to live with them for a long time. I'll be performing them on stage for hopefully years to come, and I want to make sure they're as good as possible. So like, whereas another one rides the bus in 1980, I dashed up in like 20 minutes. Now I could spend like months fine-tuning lyrics to like some goofy novelty song, just because I care,
And that shows, and again, that to my ears, that's what makes them special and different. It's true parody in the sense that you are having some fun with the reiteration of the original, but you're also honoring it.
Yeah, I do my best. It does come from a place of respect, because when I do my parodies, they're not meant to put down anybody. They're not stepping on somebody's toes. A lot of parody artists, they go for the jugular, and they, I guess that's more satire. But I've done satire here and there, but it's pretty. It's not toothless, but it's not mean spirited. I don't want to put people down. I think you can have plenty of fun and have be certainly funny without having it be at somebody else's expense.
Absolutely, and there's just been plenty of that, and we don't need any more. We need a better spirit in the world. Speaking of the world, you're about to go out on tour, correct?
Yes, we're doing a big North American tour, 133 dates, starting the end of April and ending the end of October. It's going to be a big one. So we're I'm not sure exactly when this this is coming out, but tickets go on sale, I think, December 10th. We're really looking forward to it. Obviously, we haven't been doing a lot of traveling in the last couple of years, so we're very much looking forward to being out in the world. And we're going to be careful. We're going to be safe, but hopefully it's going to be a super spreader of joy.
And hopefully by the time those first dates occur, we will be in a better place with our shared pandemic experience. But that would be a hell of a shirt, super spreader of joy.
Yeah, I'm hoping I don't need to do my meet and greet inside a giant glass bubble, but we'll see,
Everything Fab Four is presented by Salon.com, the premier news, politics, innovation, and arts website. For more information, visit everythingfab4.com, where you can learn more about our podcast and my latest Beatles-related book, Living the Beatles Legend, The Untold Story of Mal Evans. The Everything Fab Four theme song, Seize the Day, is provided courtesy of Black Rabbit, the high-octane Beatles cover band, an innovative psychedelic rock project from Rockaway Beach, Queens in New York City. Like what you heard today on Everything Fab Four? Be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, and recommend the show to your friends. Plus, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EF4 Podcast. Distributed by Salon.com, Everything Fab Four is a Wonderwall production. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everyone has a story.